Tulane Future of Energy Forum. Please be seated. The session will begin momentarily. A reminder that Tulane University promotes and protects the free exchange of ideas. Freedom of expression includes the ability to engage or not to engage in the exchange, examination, and discussion of ideas. It does not include the right to disrupt the freedom of others. Therefore, we prohibit the physical or virtual disruption, shouting down, blocking, or suppressing of a protest, a demonstration, program, or an invited speaker's right to speak. Please note that disruptions of this nature may result in the removal from the event.
Good morning and welcome to Tulane University. It is my pleasure to introduce our first session this morning, the Energy Supply Chain and Manufacturing Equation. If time allows, at the end of the session, the panel will take questions submitted by the audience. To submit a question, please scan the QR code located on the screen. Please be sure to silence your cell phones, enjoy the conversation, and please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our moderator, Anjana Turner.
My name is Anjana Turner, and I'm very happy to be back at my alma mater, Tulane. I went to school here for undergrad and law school, so thank you all so much for inviting me to share a discussion among my great panelists here. Thank you so much for considering us to, share our knowledge and industry experience and expertise. So thank you, Tulane, and thank you for the audience members for joining us. So I would like to start by mentioning our wonderful panelists. We have Daniel Leonard from Gulf Wind Technologies, Chief Product Officer. We have Monika Gerhart from Gulf South Renewable Energy Industry Association, Executive Director. And we have Professor Osman Kazan, and he is a professor here at Tulane in the business school. And I would love to have some opening statements generally from your standpoint as to energy supply chain and how you're looking at this in the manufacturing equation. Just a couple of minutes each as to your respective organizations and your respective roles as to how you're conceptualizing this topic and what you're doing in the space.
Sure. So to start, Gulf Wind Technology is a wind technology company. We are experts in composite technologies, and we're designing solutions for the wind industry. We work with OEMs, operators, amongst a number of other industry participants. And the way that we're looking at the industry right now is really there's a lot of uncertainty driving decisions among operators or among OEMs. There's been a number of things that have come up in the last several months, blade suppliers that have filed for bankruptcy. So there's a lot of turmoil in the industry right now. Obviously, the policy changes that have occurred are driving a lot of these decisions. From our perspective, we are providing services to all these entities and working with them to develop ways to address the current situation, plan for the future, and continue to expand the market as it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Monika?
Hi, I'm Monika Gerhart. I am Executive Director of Gulf States Renewable Energy Industries Association. I know that's a mouthful. It's a trade association. We're an affiliate of the National Solar Energy and Industries Association. We serve companies in all parts of the supply chain here in the Gulf Coast, from manufacturers to OEMs, EPCs, law firms, accounting firms, and folks across the supply chain.
Wonderful. Thank you. Professor?
Hi, my name is Osman Kazan. Good morning to everybody. I'm excited to be part of this panel. I had a chance to work in supply chain and logistics companies in and around the FW area, Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I had a chance to teach in here at Tulane for 12 years, and in different programs, including energy, master management in energy program. And of course, I mean, as we transition from classical type of power generation into more renewables, we are trying to also raise talents in here at Tulane so that they can be successful analysts, decision makers, leaders of the topic. And we encourage our students also. Our program is basically wants to host this event, this forum, so that there is that industrial collaboration, and we can raise our, again, students up to the challenge.
Absolutely, thank you for that. So, again, my name's Anjana Turner. I'm an international energy attorney, and from my standpoint as an attorney, there's a lot in the way of challenging certain types of new regulations from different segments of the industry. Right now, we have a lot of tariff changes recently with the Trump administration implementing wide-ranging tariffs from goods from certain countries. These are concerns that we have to really take seriously in the sense of the certainty that businesses are able to anticipate as they source their products and materials from different parts of the world. So from that standpoint, I would like to discuss this question with Daniel Leonard and see what your thoughts are with Gulf Wind and see how you're reacting to changes in tariffs right now as you continue to develop products and new business lines and establish a larger footprint across the industry and the wind sector.
Yeah, so I'll speak more kind of generically and kind of get into Gulf Wind's perspective on it, but overall, tariffs raise prices for everybody, right? There's no way around that. So the net effect of what's happened and what is happening is that it is going to raise prices. However, the way to combat that is through reducing cost in other ways, right? And so from our perspective and where we're focused is really on research and development of technologies that help to reduce cost. In the supply chain, obviously, the tariffs are going to have a net effect of onshoring manufacturing into the U.S. And creating a marketplace here in the U.S. But in order to do that, you still have to compete, right, with cost internationally with other manufacturers. So how can you do that? Well, you have to do research and development into new technologies for manufacturing. And so looking to some of the other industries that have advanced manufacturing, Tesla has innovated ways of making cars that other car manufacturers now getting onto. Technologies like that are really making a step change in manufacturing is really what's going to disrupt the global supply chain and make the capability of U.S. manufacturing be able to compete. Overall, it's not just tariffs, though. There's a lot of other policy changes that have occurred over the last several months that are driving the wind industry, right, and how our customers interact with us and the services that we provide to our customers. So those policies, what they're really driving is business uncertainty and the uncertainty of investment for the future of whether it's a developer or even an OEM that wants to expand a product line. Taking those into account, what we're doing with our customers is helping them plan. We're focusing on the near-term opportunities they have to pull forward some projects or deliver to the market services and products that align with what we can provide to them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. And Monika, can you touch a little bit on the policy aspects of, what you're seeing in addition to tariffs, but also some of the policy aspects that your industry association is looking at in order to improve the general business climate in the solar and renewable industries?
Sure. I mean, I think that, so where I live is really focused on offtake and state and local policies that can, public policy that can create a pathway to getting getting electrons to grid. But I think what deserves the most attention for right now is just first and foremost are changes under HR 1, otherwise called OB3, otherwise called the Reconciliation Bill, which made significant modifications to the Inflation Reduction Act, and also an onslaught of executive orders since then, right, and new guidance. So, I mean, I think that the foreign entities of concern changes are honestly the biggest drivers of change in the industry right now. A foreign entity of concern is really targeted at China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Of those, China is really, it's really anti-China, right? They're the ones who are manufacturing the most components that would be necessary in the supply chain for the renewable energy industry. So I'm really talking about the 48E, the 45X, and the 45Y. So 45X is advanced manufacturing, 45Y is the production tax credit, also manufacturing, right? And the 48E is the investment tax credit. And those are only for zero emissions technologies, and of the zero emissions technologies, only solar and wind were singled out for changes, right? So nuclear and hydrogen remained relatively intact. In terms of, if you don't mind, I'm just going to drill down for a moment. There's the requirements for ineligibility or denial there's a couple of new different tests that evolved after HR1. And again, and this is really the EOs. So some of the guidance was issued as recently from the IRS as September 2nd. So we're talking about really new information, right? There's a taxpayer test in terms of how much of your ownership is internationally owned, if it's more than 50%, by either one of the foreign entities of concern, a government, a person, a company. The other is an annual test. And the headlines are that we're onshoring some of these investments, but really also this question of the announcements that have been made, how much will actually break ground given these updates and these changes. So there are, so again, and that's really geared towards manufacturing. Daniel sort of alluded to this question of commencing construction and the modifications to HR1 to the Inflation Reduction Act that created this really fast timeline for companies to commence construction in 2026 aligned with these IRS updates. They pretty much eradicated what we would previously have called safe harbor, or we still call safe harbor, to be clear. But safe harboring has allowed companies to do things like procure long lead construction items or just demonstrate a good faith effort that they are beginning construction and they have about 4 years to bring a project to completion. And again, these are, primarily utility scale projects that would be selling hundreds of megawatts, in some cases gigawatts, to the grid in order to meet our energy demand. Just want to keep the focus on that, right? Meeting energy demand. Of the technologies, solar and wind are probably the quickest and also the cheapest to deploy. So in terms of meeting our energy demand, that's kind of the way to get it done. So there are a couple exceptions for rooftop projects, but really also this physical work test is now required. So the 5% kind of goes away. It's no longer a valid method to establish the beginning of construction. And so the Inflation Reduction Act created a series of carrots, right, to accomplish these same goals. And what we're seeing is a shift towards sticks. And that's created a lot of unpredictability in the supply chain because all of these companies need to demonstrate supply chain traceability. So if you work for an accounting firm and a law firm or any of the other firms that are involved in papering these projects and papering these deals, this is good news for you. If you're looking at this at an aggregate global level, we are rediverting resources. All the money is still there, right? It's still moving around our economy, but it's shifting from energy production to papering projects. And that's not great news in terms of meeting energy demand. It's just not. So I want to tell you about my supply chain, my members in the supply chain, but I also don't want to.
Yes, we're going to touch on
Okay.
that. You'll have time to touch on that. Thank you. I wanted to ask Professor Kazan, in terms of global impact on tariff, trade policy, and any uncertainty, perhaps, or even just ways to kind of perhaps maneuver around these new changes in the current climate, what are you seeing and what aspects are standing out to you the most in terms of meeting the energy demand? And with respect to the supply chain, we're looking at critical minerals as an aspect of what we're needing in order to meet that demand. What are you seeing as ways to kind of look into ways to kind of circumvent the disruptions that we're seeing?
Sure, and we say in supply chain, your supply chain is as strong as the weakest link. The bottleneck in the supply chain is the one that basically determines the capacity. And there is that rare earth minerals are being mined in different places all around the world, and there is a movement of producing them in here, mining them in here. And also as energy transition from classical means into renewables, it's been increasing everywhere. That revolution is taking place. And that disruptions, be it some geopolitical conflicts or natural events, disasters, earthquakes, are affecting the flow, the midstream supply chain, and that's basically adding the cost components. Most of us as the consumers, when we want power readily available in our households, in our businesses, when we look into the power equation, we only see actually, most population sees the bill at the end of the month. And the price becomes, affordability becomes an important issue. So as a movement, as basically a new things happening, we basically want to produce those rare earth minerals around in here in the US, and also make it available. Not only that, not only the minerals, but also the big equipment is needed to actually produce for new modern nuclear plants needs enormous equipments. Even the size may be small, but still small for that scale is big for different manufacturing activities. And so the cost is an important thing. Resilience, the supply chains needs to be resilient. We want the power available anytime we need it. And of course, reliability, sustainability, and affordability, as I mentioned before. These four components, depending on different partners, different components of the supply chain, may have different precedents, but they are very important. So the cost is driving that. There is also a movement towards renewable energy, and that's going to take place. One other thing is, besides material costs and smooth flow of the supply chains, is the manpower. And that's also, we need to basically raise the individuals, men and women, up to the task for, as I said, the decision makers, analysts, even in the technician levels, up to directors, and all these things needs to be raised up. And as I said, under the Energy Institute at Tulane, we are doing our best to keep up with the demand in every aspect of that change.
Absolutely. Professor Kazan, thank you so much. You touched a lot on reliance, reliability, sustainability, and affordability for energy. And you also mentioned a lot with respect to how we're preparing the workforce as part of the supply chain. Monika, did you have anything to say about the workforce as part of the supply chain when it comes to your Renewables Energy Industry Association and what you're seeing across your with respect to the companies that are members?
I mean, a lot of our higher ed institutions here in Louisiana have invested pretty big in workforce development. And I think that, you know, in terms of job placement now, for those folks that have been either newly trained or retrained or upskilled, I think there's going to be some challenges. I think I see some immediate shifts. That doesn't mean that things won't shift again, right? Yeah.
So the adaptability is kind of really driving, being more adaptable is just really driving a lot more upskilling, a lot more investment, a lot more training.
Well, I mean, to the point that was just made, I think that we want people to be specifically trained and specifically, you know, for their career, right? And so we, in anticipation of job growth in specific sectors, specific industry needs, we invested heavily in workforce development. Whether or not those newly trained people are going to be able to be placed in new jobs, if there are significant shifts in the industry, remains to be seen. I think, as I just kind of alluded to, we don't know yet, but I would expect to see job growth in lawyering and accounting and all the kinds of paper that is needed to certify compliance with the new regulations.
Yes, so hopefully lawyers and accountants, we're going to be doing well.
Y'all get in on this.
So, Daniel, I wanted to touch on a point that you made earlier as to onshoring manufacturing and how increasing the tariffs across the board in a number of countries that are of importance to the energy supply chain, it's incentivizing companies in the United States or companies doing business outside of the United States to bring that manufacturing here. What are you doing in your role, and what are you seeing at Gulf Wind Technologies as your top priorities in terms of onshoring manufacturing and taking advantage of incentives to bring those jobs and the manufacturing and additional company operations here at your company, but across the industry in wind technology?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. In terms of what we're doing, we have a number of grant opportunities that we are exploring. We've applied for a number of grants with the DOE. We've received some grants with the DOE. What that's driving for us is research and development, not only on technologies for the wind industry, but also for technologies that may help drive advanced manufacturing. And so I guess the one thing that I would say is what we'd like to do more of is work with some of the labs around the country, whether that's Oak Ridge, NREL, some of the others like that have capability for companies like us to engage with and develop new technologies that can help drive industry forward. I think there's a real opportunity with those labs in the U.S. To really enable industry, enable technology development, and I think that's one of the things I'd like to see, push forward in terms of policy development, is really driving capital towards that to create the opportunities for advanced manufacturing. It's difficult as a company like Gulf Wind to really push forward and invest in new technologies without there being a market for the technologies.
I see.
And so you kind of have to create the market. Companies like Tesla, Elon Musk, he goes out and he takes that risk himself, right? He has the capital to do that. A lot of other companies don't have that kind of capital resource available to them, and so they're a lot less, risk taking, and they're more risk averse to the investments they make in advanced manufacturing. But just looking at what you can do with on AI coming into the market, using AI to help with making decisions, with manufacturing, with technology development, really pulling all that forward and taking advantage of it, I think is critical, right, to helping develop the technology. But yeah, I mean, I think where we'd like to go is continue to work with industry partners like the national labs, along with OEMs, to develop new ways of bringing those manufacturing jobs here to the U.S., at least for our industry.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Monika, what makes you excited about the innovations that you're seeing? We're talking about R&D. We're talking about new investments and new technologies, using AI to, bolster manufacturing here in the United States, or even support new technology development or use cases. What makes you excited these days in terms of the innovation we're seeing across the industry?
So I'm Tulane poli-sci alum, and public policy is kind of my happy place. And so I could go drone on and on and on and on about that all day, and I find it very exciting. But I think what's also really exciting is just we as member companies. So Gulf States Renewable Energy, as I mentioned, is a trade association, and our member companies are phenomenal. So to kind of work backwards or forwards, however you want to look at it, Atala Steel is one of our companies that obviously is producing raw materials. They make steel beams that are used for mounting systems for solar energy projects. They're based out of Mississippi, Canton, Mississippi. There's our manufacturers like Omco and Enstall. Enstall is a family of 5 companies that create racking for solar systems. So whether that's ground mounted using steel or roof mounting using aluminum. We have panel and inverter manufacturers like Jinko and First Solar and Solar Edge. We've got wind, like Daniel, like Gulf Wind Technology is an amazing member that does a lot of amazing work. We've got electrical engineering and software companies like Schneider Electric, or WSP was here yesterday. And then the energy storage folks. These are large-scale batteries that can store at utility scale, build during the day when the energy resources are rich, and then drain the batteries, for example, at night or when there's low wind resources. Canadian Solar, Tesla, GE, Enphase, AES are all really exciting energy storage companies. And then Daniel keeps talking about the OEMs, even just the operations and maintenance folks like Gulf Isle Shipyard. We think of them as a Louisiana homegrown shipbuilding oil and gas company. They also do operations and maintenance for utility scale solar and wind projects, and they're an amazing part of the supply chain. So I think to your earlier point about, just how all these pieces fit together, and on any single project, there's kind of a confluence of all of these different companies. It's exciting.
Absolutely, thank you. And Professor Kazan, can you touch a little bit more on, the supply chain of critical minerals and how you see the puzzle pieces fitting together and the critical minerals use cases for new batteries and additional new technologies, and what excites you in terms of innovation in this space?
Sure. The one important thing is they are, of course, limited resources, and there are only certain countries are digging up those materials, maybe lithium triangle in South America, and Congo for cobalt, and China is digging its own precious or own rare materials. And as I said, there is a movement to mine those materials in the US. Canada is a good producer as well. Another thing is designing the products, like the batteries, in a way that those materials can be reused, repurposed, recycled again after the life of the product is done. For EVs are increasing, the sales are increasing steadily, despite the incentives are expiring at the end of this month. People are rushing to buy them. This is, by the way, creating another supply chain disruptions, maybe because of the, as we call, bullwhip effect, demand being uncertain for the future. But that technology is basically making batteries better, and those rare elements more reusable, recyclable. So that's the new technology coming from in that space. And we are excited about it, and hopefully it's going to make the next generation equipments, power generation cheaper compared to, it's going to get slightly better every time. And even without incentives, government incentives, local incentives, it may still be affordable. People will be able to buy those solar panels, EVs, and other renewable sources.
Absolutely, thank you. So I want to tie this all together in the sense of industry relationships that everybody relies on. I'm going to start with Monika. As you have a cohort of so many companies that are interconnected as it relates to every single piece of this equation, each company is relying upon different industry partners and collaborating with each other to achieve, a number of different goals. But really, I think I would like for you to touch on the industry relationships as you see them, and just generally how you are anticipating any changes in that, what you're seeing across the industry in terms of new partnerships forming in order to make energy supply chains more resilient. And so I'll ask you first, and then I'll have Daniel and Professor Kazan elaborate a little bit on their thoughts.
Well, I think we've just nailed it in terms of the amount of R&D, the amount of investment. Really, these are now mature industries. So while the industries are facing significant headwinds, we're all still moving forward. I just came back from Renewable Energy Plus, which is the largest renewable energy conference in North America. And we've long outgrown New Orleans, just gargantuan scale. And it was just a great reminder of how the industry is still in many ways thriving. I think that, as I mentioned, my policy work is really focused on offtake and ensuring that public policy is most conducive to all of our great companies having a place to go with their products. So, for example, I'm working through statewide siting legislation right now. Currently on solar, will be wind next year. Act 279 of the Louisiana legislative session created a statewide permitting process for utility scale projects. Jeff Arnold's sitting over there with Right On Energy. And working through that process with the agency that is now promulgating regs based on the legislative session. And we've been working on that for 8 months or something. Grid enhancing technologies and the ways in which commercially available technologies have not been widely deployed in Louisiana that can add capacity to our existing transmission and distribution infrastructure. So if you think about, we're talking all the ways how we get electrons to grid and then how we move those electrons around. And again, the Memorial Day outage is a great example of where maybe a grid enhancing technology could have provided some stopgap and helped dispatchers meet demand where it was, right, in real time. Honestly, if you want to learn more, really do a deep dive on some of our stuff. November 14th, we're hosting a conference here in New Orleans at Gallier Hall. Tickets have not opened up. We're going to limit it to about 100 people, and just would love to include you.
Wonderful, thank you. So conferences are also, of course, a big part of building and sustaining and strengthening industry relationships. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of the industry relationships that your company is relying on as you continue to move forward and advance and innovate and look at new technologies, seek new investment? What type of partners are you relying on as you move and advance forward?
So from our perspective and where we are in the industry, we have partners that are some of the OEMs, original equipment manufacturers that develop and have developed wind turbine technologies over the years. We also have partners that are providing us services and helping support our products in the field be deployed. But one of the things I wanted to touch on, Monika said, was electrons. Electrons are electrons, right? Whether they come from wind, solar, nuclear. I think it's going to take all, right, to be able to compete globally with some of the other countries around the world that are, they don't have some of the policy restrictions we have. They don't have some of the permitting. They're subsidizing not just renewables, but they're subsidizing every industry to develop these electrons. And I think if the United States is going to compete, in AI and some of these other new technologies that really pull that energy demand off the grid, we really need to take advantage of all the sources we can. And you mentioned earlier, solar and wind are some of the most quickly deployed and scalable energy sources that we can deploy. I do think that's going to come to fruition in the next probably 2 years, where this administration is going to be faced with those questions and how to bring more energy demand onto the grid. And they're going to have to lean back towards something that can come quicker than natural gas. Natural gas is expanding. There's a lot of developments to develop more natural gas energy. However, supply chain issues there exist. And so, I'm interested to see where it goes, but overall, we work with everyone in our industry, and we also work with Monika as part of her cohort of companies to help drive forward policy initiatives and policy changes across the board.
So with respect to policy changes, I'm going to ask Professor Kazan first, and then I'll follow up with the rest of the group. In terms of policy changes, you have a magic wand. What would you like to see?
In terms of policy change, of course, now this probably it's just the opposite of maybe the current administration is doing. The incentives, of course, still will encourage people to adapt more. We can see just the other day it was in the news. It's almost comical. A person maybe in California installed solar panels at the top of his car, This is like collapsible, and he basically drives to the beach with his family. As he parked his car, he opens them up and then starts charging his battery. When you think about it, it's, almost laughable, but you can see the desire in the public place that people want to adapt and adapt those new technologies. And it's definitely taking place. And we have the example of Germany, for example. In terms of renewables, they are actually phasing out nuclear energy, but their renewable production is about 40%, getting close to 50% now. And in the US, we are about 15%, and China is also doing better than us, but we can actually get there. So I guess market has the golden touch, that script, the hand of the market is going to play no matter what. The price, basically, those movements from the public, that sustainability, affordability, resilience will basically push those activities even further, and then people will be adapting, and you just can't stand against the current. So it's going to happen. Incentives, of course, is going to help. That's no denial on that. If with the change of the administration, or when the current administration sees this maybe in the slightly longer run, they can actually go back to balancing those acts.
Thank you. Monika, you have a magic wand. What policy changes would you like to see?
Don't give a poli-sci major magic. Look, so we've got another bite at the apple on HR1. There will be another budget bill next year, right? There's a budget bill every year. So I think, there's some potential opportunity there. There was an early sunset for 2 of the technologies under the zero emissions production and investment tax credits. We can look at those dates again. I think that will happen. On the regulatory side, I'm less certain. And then there's also this sort of, I think nationally, this sort of pivot to state and local policy. And so while on the financing side, so much is dependent federally, at least in the Gulf states, right? Other states have different kinds of incentive structures that are state-level incentive structures, and our Gulf states don't, right? And at the same time, I think that pivot is really focused on things like permitting, bringing down soft development costs, really, again, kind of expediting projects rather than stalling them as much as possible, given in the context of all of these federal changes and unpredictability in the market.
Wonderful. And giving a chief policy officer, chief product officer a magic wand is going to be crazy. We can talk about policy, but you're a chief product officer. You have a magic wand. What are you doing with it?
I'll speak on policy actually. To be honest, the ITC and PTC credits are great. However, I think they kind of put the industry in a place where we are now, where companies have to rethink how they invest, and so it's going to create this kind of depression in the market. What I'd like to see is policy that is directed more towards, as I mentioned earlier, advanced manufacturing technologies, right? And in a space where companies like ourselves can really raise the bar in how we produce what is produced, right? Manufacturing the technologies that help to make wind and solar more competitive in the marketplace, where they're actually driven from a pull perspective instead of incentivized to develop those resources. They're competitive on LCOE basis, right? And they're so competitive that the case is clear, right? So policy that's directed towards the R&D of the advanced manufacturing technologies, I think, is where it needs to go. And if I had a magic wand, that's where I'd put the money.
I like it. So I want to give everyone a chance on the stage to maybe have 30, 45 seconds to do any thoughts, generally speaking, to close out, and we'll have time for maybe a question or two afterwards. I'll begin with Professor Kazan.
Sure. And in the supply chain, besides cost components, the main thing is matching demand and supply in every level. We basically very well defined upstream, midstream, and downstream. We can see as the households, we can actually kind of isolate and get, I don't want to say get rid of the midstream, but we can actually install some solutions. We can, some of, for example, the solar energy is available everywhere, generally speaking. Even they talk about the cloud cover, but there are some household activities strongly correlated. The usage is strongly correlated with the solar power. That can be AC, which requires a lot of power, I know. Some of us may have pools, pool pumps, for example. They're generally advised to run during the when the sun is up. And also charging the cars, EV cars, for example, with the adoption of the battery power, wall powers, that can actually work. So we can actually isolate, create micro grids in a way in our households. That's going to reduce the, or adjust the power profile, maybe reduction in the peak load, other things will come, other benefits will come to the society. So as the teachers, instructors in here, we do research in the school. As part of the Energy Institute, we try to organize programs like this, forums like this, so that we raise our students up and up to the challenge. And this is actually a great venue for us to share that, to create that collaboration with our industry partners.
Thank you. You seem so optimistic as to the future and the future of the Tulane students and contribution
Definitely.
to our supply chain.
We are very proud of our students. I can see some of them in here. And as they are raising up in their organizations, we only feel pride, nothing more.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts?
I mean, I think this is a great panel. I think in part because the supply chain often doesn't have a ton of visibility until it breaks, right? You know, during COVID, when all of a sudden everyone was, whatever the thing du jour was that they were missing, right? And so I think having this conversation is important because so much of energy production is not focused on supply chain and not an understanding of the companies that are all make up different parts and how they're all working together to achieve some common goals of bringing all of these electrons to grid. I think that as a follow-up to this panel, I think at our November 14th conference, we're going to host a manufacturers roundtable that will do something similar in terms of all of these companies that are in various parts and how they fit together. And I'm really looking forward to that being almost a 2.0 for this conversation. And it's just great. Thanks.
I know we all look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you. And
Yeah, so last thoughts. We are still in a state of turmoil in terms of policy. So I would say, you know, business investment is going to take the path of taking less risk at this point in time. So until we get more definitive, you know, future expectations of environment to invest, it's going to be a little mixed, right? So I'm looking forward to getting to the point where we can plan further out with our partners and really push forward advancements in new technologies.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Will everybody give a round of applause to our wonderful panel? And I have a minute left for questions, which is one question from the audience.
Given that solar and wind have close to 100% efficiency in delivery of energy production to the final energy use, what do you think are the best ways to change public perception that these sources are inefficient compared to traditional fossil generation?
I'll have that question answered by Monika.
Sure. So I think two things are changing. One is the perception of solar or wind as intermittent technologies, and that's really the growth of energy storage or large batteries, right? So deploying energy storage at scale really offsets that kind of narrative around intermittent technologies that are only producing at maximum capacity when the resources are rich, right? Sun and wind. The other thing that I think is really important Whoops, I just realized we're out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Okay.
So I think we're going to have to
leave it there.
continue this conversation. If you want to hear from Monika, she'll have her conference on November 14th if you want to continue the discussion afterwards. But thank you all to our panelists. Thank you for our attendees for joining us and hearing from us. And we really, really appreciate you joining in on the conversation. And we're really excited to continue it. And thank you, Tulane, for everything. And we've got 2 poli-sci graduates still shaping the policy around energy, manufacturing, our supply chain. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this session. Our next session in this space will be Cooler Choices, Why Consumers and Brands Are Aligning on Clean Energy, and that is scheduled to start in just a few moments at 10:20 a.m.